I'm later than I meant to be, but now we're ready for my Game of the Year list for 2022. There's 15 games on the list, same as last year, and we're doing short descriptions for the first 10 and then more detail in the top 5. It's also a bit of a soft list till we get to the top spots. Some of them could easily move around and it wouldn't matter much. Not Bayonetta 3 though, that deserves its place. Oh, and just before we start, I want to give a special mention to ex-zodiac. If that wasn't only in early access, it'd easily be in my top 5. Now though, let's begin. Number 15. Aperture Desk Job. Aperture Desk Job is a short tech demo for the Steam Deck. It has a lot of the usual Portal-specific charm, but there's not a whole lot to it. I will admit that I didn't play it on the best platform, having played it on a controller on my PC rather than my actual Steam Deck, but while I understand the experience was explicitly designed for the Steam Deck, there just isn't enough there for me to care about trying it out again. I wouldn't ever put a tech demo any higher than this, but even so, I'm not sure it should be anyway. Number 14. Bayonetta 3. Bayonetta 3 is a game I thoroughly didn't enjoy. There's just no aspect of it I liked. I want to give a breakdown on the game like I usually would, but all I can think of is how much I dislike the game. I've always wanted to like Platinum games, but there's just something in them which holds me back. This time it didn't just hold me back though, it threw me out of the room and told me not to come back in. The focus on summoning demons to fight felt clunky, and I wanted to ignore it, but the game forces it at every opportunity. I just don't know where Platinum go from here really. I like the world of Bayonetta more than I like the games themselves, and I don't know if I'll bother getting Bayonetta 4, especially if we've got Viola as the lead now, because I just can't stand her gameplay. I kinda want to try The Lost Demon, just because it looks very different from anything else they've made, but I don't really have much hope for Platinum games going forward. Number 13. Somerville. Somerville is the first title from Jumpship, a company founded by one of the ex-leads from Playdead, hence its obvious similarities to Limbo and Inside. The game tells a grounded story of a father trekking across the country to find their wife and child in the midst of an alien invasion. At least, it does for the first half. After that, it's a complete mess. Everything past the midway point devolves into a jumbled sci-fi trash pile, taking the focus from the interesting emotional core and forcing it onto the alien backdrop. I've honestly not seen a game fall off so quickly and so hard before. Part of me wants to put it higher on the list just for how impressive that is. I'm not going to though, I'm too disappointed. Number 12. Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope is the second in the series of odd Nintendo and Ubisoft pairings, and it's worse than the first. This time you're on a multi-planet chase to rescue the titular Sparks and find Rosalina. While its budget and scope is seemingly much larger than the first game, it's also definitely less charming than Kingdom Battle was. The voice acting made the characters much less likeable, and the worlds, while much larger, felt less interesting than those in the original. While it's not outright bad, it's definitely not a game I particularly enjoyed. Number 11. Stray. Stray is the cat game. It's the game with the cat. For years that was pretty much all we knew about the game, and even now after finishing, that's still primarily how I describe it. Well, that and mid. I honestly don't understand why people liked it so much. I almost feel like I played an entirely different game from everyone else. While the cat itself was neat for about half an hour, after that it was just kind of fine. The game just feels shallow, it doesn't really explore things as deeply as I'd like. What's with the giant eyes in the sewer? I don't need answers to everything, but the Zerk seemed like a big problem at the start of the game, but completely irrelevant in the second half. I liked the robots and world quite a bit, more than I liked the cat, honestly, but the game itself, not so much. Number 10. Horizon Forbidden West. I think it's quite well known how much I like Horizon, but Forbidden West just wasn't as good. I definitely like it, but I just didn't like it as much as I liked Zero Dawn. Honestly, I'm not even sure why, it just didn't hit the same. I like a lot of the characters, especially Kotalo, and I like different story beats, especially learning more about Ted Faro, but overall I prefer the first game to this. When I think back on the game, I can't even think why I feel this way. Everything I remember enjoying. I think possibly that's the problem though. This game just isn't memorable in the same way Zero Dawn is. Number 9. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. I always break my no remake rule, and this time it's for Crisis Core. Going in, I expected more of the remake treatment honestly, not exactly to the same scale of 7 Remake, but something to tie it in with the changes introduced there. This is a pure remake of the PSP game though, and it really feels like it. This is possibly the purest essence of video game I've ever experienced. The finale is great, but you all know that by now, and Zack's kind of cool in a massive nerd way, but otherwise I'd say take it or leave it. You won't miss out on a lot if it passes you by. Number 8. Autonauts vs Pirate Bots. Autonauts vs Pirate Bots adds real-time strategy features to the Autonauts formula, but cuts back on a lot of the other features from the first game. It doesn't exactly feel like a sequel, but nor does it feel like it could have been an expansion. It's more of a side game in the same universe, and it does what it does well. That being said, it does feel a little lacking in comparison to the prior game. For one thing, it just doesn't seem quite as polished. For example, the new tutorials are good, but if you outpace them, either through experimenting or prior knowledge, they just kind of break. By now, that may have been fixed, but at the time I finished it, that and some of the other issues were real problems in the way of my enjoyment of the game, and because of that I wouldn't feel right putting it any higher up. Number 7. Elden Ring. Elden Ring is a lot of people's game of the year, but clearly it's not mine. I had a good time on my journey through the lands between, but the longer it went on, the less good it was, and the more it was just a time. Definitely a time. It was also surprisingly easy. It's actually been a complaint I've had for all of the last Souls-likes, so I think it must just be that I'm better than I used to be, but a core part of the experience used to be the multiple deaths and attempts on bosses, each time learning more. For Elden Ring, there weren't actually all that many that took me multiple tries, and it just doesn't give me the same feelings I got from older games. While it does add a lot that I liked, the open world really refreshes the genre. I feel like I'm chasing a high whenever I play Souls-likes now, and it's a high I've not reached in years. Number 6. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I've just noticed that almost every game I've talked about from 2022 is a sequel, and I've consistently said, I like it, but not as much as the prior games. I wish I could say this one was going to be different, but it isn't. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is probably my third favourite Xenoblade game, first one still being X, because it just doesn't have the same strength of identity as the other games. Having finished the game, I can kind of see why. The world is literally a mix of aspects from 1 and 2, but because of that it just doesn't hold up on its own as well as the other games. The story and characters were interesting, but the world didn't have as strong an impact on me as the others in the series, and the OST is still nowhere near as good as X. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is on the brink of being a great game, but it's just not quite there, and I'm just hoping the DLC that's coming pushes it that little extra distance. Number 5. Pokemon Scarlet. Pokemon Scarlet is the second Pokemon game of 2022 and third series entry in 12 months. This time you'll explore the region of Paldea in the first fully open-world Pokemon game. After joining the Academy partway through the term, it's time for the annual treasure hunt, where each student sets out on a journey to find their own personal treasure, be that making a sandwich, snowboarding down a mountain, or anything else they can think of. For you though, it'll be helping your friends take down Team Star, finding the legendary Herba Mystica, becoming a Pokemon champion, and uncovering the mystery surrounding your newly found mythical Pokemon Koraidon. I hate that I have to preface my feelings with this, but I know the game runs badly. Some people had a much worse time with it than I did, I just had some frame rate issues, but I won't defend how poorly the game works. With that out of the way, this is the most fun I've had with a new Pokemon game in 9 years. My only real complaint is that the game seems kind of poorly balanced. There are some completely untelegraphed difficulty spikes which hit hard, while there are other areas which even at low levels are a complete joke. Overall though, I just love this game. It was a ton of fun throughout, some of the new Pokemon designs are great, especially my darling Clodsire, and it even got me pretty emotional at points. An easy recommendation from me, and certainly one of my favourite games in the entire series. Number 4. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Sunbreak is the Master Rank expansion for Monster Hunter Rise, and more than doubles the size of the game. After ending the rampage, the saviour of Komura is called upon to investigate an invading crab, before being whisked away to Elgato Outpost by Fiorane, a Knight of the Royal Order and Rondine's sister. After arriving, they're tasked with quelling the three lords, Garangolm, Lunagaron and Malzeno, who have been driven into a frenzy by the mysterious Curio, and ultimately incapacitating a demonic creature of great power. It's hard to consider this game as an expansion with just how large it is. At this point, I've spent more time in Sunbreak than I did in Rise in the first place, and while this is lower on the list than that was last year, that's not due to a lack of quality. Sunbreak adds a ridiculous amount of content to Rise, not just in terms of monsters and areas, but even overhauls to the combat that, while not something I exactly make use of, do add yet another layer to an already deep game. There are definitely parts of it I'm not a big fan of, like I'm not really into all the anomaly hunting or curio crafting, but even without touching those, there's literally hundreds of hours of top tier game here, and one which, nearly a year after its release, I'm still nowhere near done with. Number 3. Lil Gator Game. Lil Gator Game is an adorable adventure about a gator that wants to play with their sister. She's busy doing college work, but all you want to do is play like you did when you were younger, and you've got a plan to do it. You'll need the help of all of your friends to decorate an entire island and create a fantasy adventure to play through as the legendary hero. That'll definitely win her over. And if it doesn't, just do it again, bigger, better, and with even more friends to make along the way. I always thought Little Gator Game looked cute, but I actually wasn't planning on getting it originally, at least not on release. I only picked it up when I did because I needed an extra game for that week's set of videos, and I'm incredibly glad I did because it's one of the best games of the year. It just doesn't miss. Everything the game goes for, it executes perfectly. Getting around is fun, the characters are heartfelt and hilarious, and all the hats, weapons, shields and gear you can find are at the very least fun to look at, if not something which entirely redefines the way you engage with the game. Finally, the story is wonderful, exploring the pressure of growing up to fulfill both your own expectations and those thrust upon you by the world, as well as how important it is to spend time doing the things you like with the people you love. Undeniably my favourite story of 2022. Number 2. God of War Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok continues the story of 2018's God of War, following Kratos and Atreus' life in Midgard. Atreus is focused on learning more about Loki and his giant heritage, while Kratos is trying to prepare his son for a life after his death. Killing Baldur has brought about Fimbulwinter, the precursor to Ragnarok, and throws the Nine Realms into various forms of chaos. Kratos tries to stay detached from the problem, with his only concern being protecting Atreus from the Aesir, but a friendly visit from Odin sets them on a path to war that they cannot avoid. I've spoken at length about Ragnarok in some of my podcasts already, but I really didn't want to like this game as much as I do. I didn't particularly like 2018, and I wasn't expecting this to change my mind much. That, plus the pervasive compliments towards the game from just about everyone else, made me feel even more apprehensive, but soon after starting to play, I realised that it really was as good as everyone was saying. There are definitely things I dislike, the UI is a bit of a mess, but the things I do like heavily outweigh my complaints. The new weapon is a particular favourite, and the Atreus sections provide an interesting counter to Kratos' usual playstyle. The main reason this is so high though is the emotional resonance of the game. I'm a sucker for games which give me lasting feelings, and there's one particular moment which still leaves me feeling sad whenever I think about it. A truly fantastic game, and I can't wait to see what comes next. My game of the year for 2022, Neon White. Neon White follows the titular Neon White after they awaken in heaven and are forced to take part in a tournament to kill demons. If you win, you get to stay in heaven for a year. Lose, and you'll be returned to hell until your next chance. Break the rules, however, and your mask will explode, resulting in your execution and removal from the tournament forever. It's up to you to win the tournament, recover your lost memories, and uncover exactly what Neon Green is up to behind the scenes. It's rare that I like a game for the gameplay over all else. While gameplay is obviously a very important part of the game, I can overlook mediocre gameplay if the story and world are good enough. Neon White's story is perfectly serviceable, honestly I kind of like it despite how cringe other people seem to think it is. There are other games this year with better stories, or if not better, at least more emotionally charged experiences, but it's got just some of the purest speed-focused gameplay in anything I've ever played. I've always liked games like that, Cyberhook, Violet Swing, Lovely Planet, but I could never make it to the end. Neon White, however, has the gameplay and speed I was looking for, plus with a story and world that could carry me over in the places where I otherwise would have gotten too frustrated to continue. I have two complaints about Neon White. The first is that some of the levels last a little too long, and those tend to be the most demanding levels too, particularly the final boss fight. Luckily, these usually have pretty relaxed timings for the medals, so you don't have to go through them too many times if you don't want to. The other, and much more important complaint, is that the game locks progression behind gold medals. While this wasn't a problem for me, it's also something I hate in every game, so it wouldn't be right for me to not bring it up. Having the medals is totally fine. I like going through the levels and getting better times, but I don't feel like people should have to do that to progress. As for what I do like though, it's just about everything else. The game just oozes style. The art is fantastic and the music fits perfectly. The gameplay, as I've already said, is fast-paced, utterly smooth, and constantly compelling, always leaving you on the edge of one more run. I know some people don't like the story, but I love that too. Honestly, Neon White is close to flawless in my opinion. One of my favourite games, and probably my easiest choice for Game of the Year ever. So I managed to be late again. Only a week later than I was planning for once, though it's also for a good reason. Releasing a game and a Game of the Year list in the same week was just a little too much work for me, and obviously this was the one that could get pushed back easier. They're done now and I'm happy with both. You can go buy my game on Steam. As for 2022, it was a weird year. I remember at the start I thought it was going to be a great year for games, and for the most part it was, but there were a hell of a lot of sequels last year, and not many of them did I enjoy over their prequels. I really should focus more on the indie side of games. A lot more stuff I like comes from there, but even as someone who likes games as much as I do, I struggle to find a lot of the smaller stuff. There's also some argument to be made about what exactly indie even is at this point. Is Stray indie? Or to be truly indie, do you need to be completely solo, no publisher whatsoever? That's more of a discussion for some other time though. For now, let me know what you thought about my list, and what your favourite games of 2022 were in the comments below. Thanks for sticking around, bye. Special thanks to my patrons, Justin Wood, Hobbs, Koopy Vegeta, and Gunrunner. You can join my patrons at patreon.com/Holden Gatsby, check out my TikTok and Twitter at Holden Gatsby, and follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Holden Gatsby. Don't forget to subscribe to all of my channels. If you want more, you can watch my last video now, but if not, then thanks for sticking around. Bye.